welcome to the section of the toolkit that specifically focuses on identifying opportunities in the customer's mobile site. If they have one, how you can improve their mobile site. If they don't have a mobile site, of course, how you can give recommendations. And all of these elements are in the toolkit, so I'll talk you through generally how to structure this piece of that conversation. First of all, it's great to actually identify the customer's objectives. You cannot give recommendations for what the mobile site or application should contain unless you actually understand if it's about a service-driven mobile element or if it's about closing sales. You also want to understand what the customer might want to do, and many clients actually forget that a user may have a different use for their mobile assets than the client themselves. So from what you just learned from Anaïs's section, it'd be great to then do that, have that conversation together with the client, because then you can also go through a real-life customer experience. And I did this just the other day with Eurostar. They buy their own staff tickets through a separate system. So going through this user experience part and showing them with the live demo camera what it is like to go from search to booking a train ticket was an eye-opener. And we then and there had the client actually giving us clear action saying we're going to improve this on our Android application and we're going to change this on our site. So there's real value in doing this. And then of course you want to make sure that you end this section by actually giving actions that will be recommendations on how to improve it. And so having this structure to that piece is very important. So three key elements that you can take away is you want to introduce, first of all, the mobile site best practice. You cannot give recommendations unless you actually identify what the recommendations are. And Steve and I have given two recommendations in past toolkit trainings. The first is with lots of time, you can actually make it an interactive game. You can remove some of the definitions and maybe some of the titles, and you can put those on the table. And then you ask the client to identify titles and descriptions and then connect the two together. Obviously, if you don't have that much time, you can at least show the website howtogetmo.com, where all the various descriptions of these best practices are listed, and that way you can at least identify the top 10 tips. The mobile-owned site and the competitor. Very often there's at least one competitor in that category that will have some very good site elements to their mobile site, or they'll already be ahead of the brand that you're sitting down with. The cool thing here is that you can say, you can steal this. This is working really well because customers are getting used to this experience on a mobile site. If you continue that, then you're adding more of a consistency for the user to embrace your site instead of being surprised by a different layout. And of course, praise them for doing things that they're doing well. And then finally, you want to actually come into the recommendations. But when we're talking about mobile websites, there is always this strange, touchy element of responsive design. So let's actually just nip that in the bud and understand why responsive design is of interest. So, responsive design is a little bit like the tube. So bear with me for this analogy. The tube was built 100 years ago, and mobile sites are a little bit like the tube. The tube was built 100 years ago. And it was in a time when there weren't that many people living in London, and it was a finite tunnel that people thought would be big enough for the size of the train. Now fast forward 100 and something odd years later, 7 million people in London are using the tube. It is hot, it is uncomfortable, and you don't have more space to actually add air conditioning. And so for the users of the tube, it's become a terrible experience. The tube is down on the weekends, it's a patch-up job now, and they can't actually improve it and modernize it quick enough. That is a little bit like having a separate mobile site. At one point or another, it will live separate from your domain, and it will need to have all these added features that you cannot add fast enough. So for that reason, responsive design is a really interesting option. It will require taking one URL and giving it different rules for layout depending on the screen. And now that we're in a period of tablets and televisions and mobile phones and laptops, a responsive design to the size of the screen is going to be very important. So in order to demo what a responsive design site really can mean is we've got in our toolkit quite a few different URLs that will show you what that is. So a great way to demo if a site is responsive is you take the bottom right corner and you drag it in. And what should happen, especially here with Currys, is that the layout changes. This would be the layout for maybe a tablet. Do you see it changing? And that would be the mobile design. So they have rules embedded in their website, which is one website that will hopefully be able to adapt and change with time. So they are avoiding the tube scenario. Sound good? Okay. And then the last thing that is a great example from the retail team is they have actually recorded for a cluster of their clients a review similar to what I showed you earlier, actually going through the mobile site experience. They uploaded it onto YouTube and they play it to clients to show what the user experience is like to go through that website. These guys all bought a candle from a retail site, but you could even do a fake train ticket or buying sneakers or buying groceries. And what they did is they used annotations within their video during the period that they talk about John Lewis or Debenhams or Marks and Spencer's. If you're Marks and Spencer's, you can start the video there and then say, but do you want to see what they said about John Lewis? Do you want to see who is your biggest competitor, and do you want to see what the user said? So this is a very easy way with your pod to sit down, record for a couple of clients, and then it has great value for 4 or 5 meetings. So that was the section. Have a look in the toolkit. All this material is up there to help you talk mobile site best practice, and hopefully you can now move on to Jonathan's station for the full value of search.